Welcome to the Pipe Currency Lounge. My name is Brian. This is my channel, Pipe Currency. And today, I'm going to give some thoughts on Aged Quiet Nights by GL Pease. But before I do that, I'm going to answer a couple of inquiries by viewers on my YouTube channel, plus some direct messages I got on Instagram. By the way, if you have Instagram, you can find me at pipe_currency, where people have inquired what I've been reading recently. I often state that I'm an avid reader, and I've talked about books in the past in one of my videos already. I've been an avid reader really since I was a teenager, and it didn't happen gradually. It just started happening. I remember in grade 11, I had a terrific English teacher named Mrs. Henderson. And she assigned us a book called Who Has Seen the Wind by W.O. Mitchell. It takes place in Saskatchewan. Of course, I didn't know who W.O. Mitchell was. I didn't know anything about this book. And quite frankly, I remember thinking, oh man, I don't want to read this book. Because, you know, when I was in high school, I was more interested in hockey, gym class, and girls. But we had to read this book. So I remember taking it home and leafing through it, and lo and behold, I just started reading it. And I spent the entire weekend reading it, and about 10 days later, I finished this book. And we had to write a report about this novel, Who Has Seen the Wind. And I remember the Saturday night, I was watching Hockey Night in Canada, as Canadian boys of my vintage used to do. I was sitting at my desk in my room, watching the game and writing my report. And at between one of the periods, the color commentator used the word catalyst twice. And I had never heard this word before, so I asked my dad what it meant, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper for me, and I looked it up. And I remember thinking, I'm going to put this word in my report. And I remember writing, the wind acted as a catalyst for the main character. I can't remember what the main character's name is, but that's what I wrote. The wind acted as a catalyst for him. And I just said, I'm taking a bit of a chance here. I'm really not sure if this is going to make sense, and I passed it in. So about a week later, during class, Mrs. Henderson called me up to the front, and she said, Brian, I read your book report for Who Has Seen the Wind. And I said, okay. She goes, it's really, really good. I'm impressed. And I said, oh, thank you. And she had circled in red the word catalyst. She said, where did you hear this word? I said, actually, I heard it twice during Hockey Night in Canada. Well, she said, you used it perfectly. And she asked if I'd ever considered studying English in university, which was the first time I really thought about that maybe English was a strength of mine. And now, I never studied English in university, but I did take some English courses, and I've had a love for books ever since. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some books that I have read over the last little while, and I'll tell you whether or not I recommend them or whatnot. The first one is an American classic, a modern American classic, and that is Thomas Pynchon's The Crying of Lot 49. I believe they call this a neo-modernist book. It's not very long. It's under 140 pages. He's got some really long books. It's the only one I've ever read by him. But without giving any spoilers, it's a very risky book. It took place in the 1960s, and of course, it's of its time politically. But basically, the novel is about an attractive stay-at-home wife who goes on a kind of odyssey looking for patterns, which I know sounds very strange, but the book itself is a little bit peculiar. And at times, the writing is excellent, and it can be really quite funny. At other times, it's a little bit confusing, and I would go back and I would read over again what I read and go, I'm not really sure what's happening here. Regardless, it's very well written. It's quite an interesting book, and it's a modern classic. But I would passively recommend this to you because, quite frankly, I don't know you. And I don't know if you would like this kind of book. It's one of those books that a lit bro, if you said you didn't like this book, I can just see some literary snob or a lit bro saying to you, well, you just didn't get it. You need to read it again. You get this in society with certain people. They'll say, oh, you didn't get it, or you don't understand it. Well, then you just, or you don't like it. You need to read it again, which kind of annoys me. I read this and I got it and I liked it. I would read it again, but I would only recommend this passively. You got to do some research to see if you like this. As I said, sometimes it's wonderfully clear and it's a page turner and it's really quite funny. And other times I had no idea what was happening and I reread it and I still didn't know what was happening. Come to find out, that's kind of what he was up to. Regardless, The Crying of Lot 49, I enjoyed this book. I would read it again, but I would recommend it to you only if you do a little research into whether or not you'd want to read it. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, this is a beauty. It's Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. To be honest, this is the only book, the only novel by Ayn Rand I've ever read, much like Thomas Pynchon. It's a bit of a long one. And it's basically, without giving any spoilers, it's about an artist or an architect named Howard Rourke, who kind of goes against the mold, goes against the grain, and the trials and tribulations he faces when he decides that he is not going to take the easy route and go along and be a mainstream architect, but instead to kind of cut his own path and the difficulty he faces, and as he slowly but surely overcomes it and becomes a great architect. It's an excellent book. I read somewhere someone said it wasn't well written. I do not understand this. Now, when Ayn Rand tried to get this published, it was during World War II. She tried to get this published. She couldn't find a publisher, and finally she gave it to one publishing house, and the editor read it, and he really liked it. He brought it to the owner of the publishing house, who refused to publish it. And the editor actually said to him, "If you don't publish this, I'm going to quit." So he said, "Okay, I'll publish it." So they published it. They didn't advertise it, and it became a bestseller based on word of mouth. Ayn Rand is a kind of divisive person. She's kind of like a Jordan Peterson or Christopher Hitchens. You either really like her or you really don't. I happen to like all three of those people I've mentioned, and I really like this book in so much it's in my top 10 favorite books of all time. I would read this book again. I'm going to, actually, and I would recommend this to you. And the last one we're going to talk about is a much easier read than the first two. I'm a bit of a Patricia Highsmith fanboy, which if you had told me this a couple years ago, I wouldn't have believed you, because I'm not much for thrillers. But The Talented Mr. Ripley is one of my favorite movies. It's also a really great book. The book is better than the movie. And this is another one of her books called The Cry of the Owl. This is a really well-written, intelligent thriller. A real page turner. You could just smoke your pipe and rip through this book, and it's really quite interesting. She's a bit of an odd duck, Patricia Highsmith. I recommend you look at some of her interviews. Very intelligent lady, very interesting lady, but a bit of a strange one, and it carries over into her characters, who sometimes you wonder, would people really act this way? Would this really happen in the plot? She once said that she didn't always like to know what was going to happen next in her novels, because it was part of the fun for her to get up every morning to sit down and write when she wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. Well, I can tell you, I would recommend this book to you. It's a real page turner. It's extremely interesting and fun to read. But if you've never read Patricia Highsmith before, I would recommend The Talented Mr. Ripley. To date, that's the best one I've read by her. But I do think this is a book you would very much enjoy, and I would recommend to the average reader. Okay, enough of that, guys. Let's get into GL Peace's Quiet Nights. I'm going to give you some thoughts about age quiet nights. Before I do that, I'm going to read for you what SmokingPipes.com says about quiet nights. They said, rich, deep, contemplative. Ripe red Virginia's fine Oriental, smoky Cyprian Latakia, and a pinch of Acadian Perique are pressed and matured in cakes before being sliced into pieces quiet nights. The sophisticated flavors and exotic aroma provide a wonderful backdrop for quiet moments of reflection. A good book. And, if you're so inclined, perhaps a wee dram. Well, there's two things I like. I like a wee dram, and I like a good book. The components are Virginia Latakia, Perique, and Orientals. It's in the English family, and it says it's a flake cut, but it's really a broken flake. And SmokingPipes.com has it right now for $14.28. And spoiler alert, I highly, highly recommend this tobacco to you. Now, I've had I've had Quiet Nights young. I've had Quiet Nights now aged. The tin I'm currently working through is from, I believe that's May. Yeah, May of 2018. So we're talking 7 full years on it. I'm going to tell you what I get. Matches for the distinguished gentleman. When you first open the tin, you might think this is going to be a Latakia bomb. like Gaslight. Another great offering by GL Pease. But it's not a lap balm at all. In fact, there's certainly Latakia there, guys. But what really carries this blend? The sourness of the Orientals and the Acadian Perique. The Perique in this really is the star, I believe. Of course, Quiet Nights is kind of the answer to Esoterica's Penzance. And I find the Perique is really what separates these two. For a pipe smoker to decide whether or not they prefer Quiet Nights or Penzance may come down to whether or not you enjoy Perique in your tobacco. And the Perique in this is just spectacular. And the Orientals, that sourness of the Orientals, whether it's young or it's aged, it holds the sourness, it holds the spiciness of the Perique. And I really believe that's what the driving force is of this tobacco. You might think by smelling it, looking at it, would be the Latakia, but that's not the case. I've said this before. This tobacco is a Hall of Fame blend. I think it's a great example of just blending mastery by Mr. Pease. If you've never had Quiet Nights by GL Pease, first of all, where have you been living? What have you been smoking? And I would overwhelmingly recommend this to you. Now, I understand, not if you don't like Englishes, I get it. This wouldn't be one you'd like. You'd have to like Englishes. But I think this is one of the examples of the mastery of an English tobacco. There are very few. In fact, I can't think for myself personally of an English tobacco I would prefer. Or, well, there may be one. But that's to be determined. But when we're talking about easily accessible tobaccos, it's Quiet Nights. This is, to me, it's just a home run blend. Now, if you don't have to believe me, let me read this for you. On 241 reviews on smokingpipes.com, Quiet Nights receives a 4.6 out of 5. You don't have to believe me, but go and read the reviews. They are just outstanding what people are saying about this tobacco. It really is just to steal a term by Prairie Piper, it's a kingly blend. Again, if you've never had this, I highly recommend it to you. It's great young, it's great aged. If you're asking what the difference is between it being young and being aged, I think the big difference is the Latakia settles down. It's creamy. It settles down into a creaminess, and the Orientals and the Perique kind of start carrying the load. Whereas when it's younger, it's a little more Latakia forward. I mean, the Orientals and the Perique are still lovely, but the Latakia is really in the forefront. What was 7 years of age, Latakia turns into a type of creaminess, and the Orientals and the Perique really become the stars. I can think of only one tobacco that rivals this. And I'll be talking about that in a future video. Regardless, Quiet Nights by GL Pease, outstanding tobacco. Highly recommended. It's in my top 10 favorite pipe tobaccos of all time. Much like Solani 633, I always have it on hand. I have 3 tins of this in Canada. One with 2 years, one with 5 years, one with 10 years aging. And every time I put a tobacco orders, when it looks like it's getting low, I always make sure I top it up with another one. Because again, it's good young, it's good aged, you really can't lose. Okay guys, that's my thoughts on Aged Quiet Nights by GL Pease. As I said, an kingly blend. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't be afraid to hit that like button. As you guys know, don't have Patreon, never ask you guys for money. It's not what my channel's about. but I do appreciate the likes and comments. Do you like Quiet Nights by GL Pease? Are you a fan of Englishes? Is there an English that you prefer over Quiet Nights? That's what I would be curious about hearing, because there's one tobacco out there that I really do think rivals it. And I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about Quiet Nights. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to all of you very soon.